Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. You're looking at some fennel. I just cut the tops off. I removed the outer leaves. There's the bulb. I've got the greens set aside. This is going to be part of my next sauerkraut experiment, and I want to link the channel that I got this recipe from so y'all can check out this woman. She's doing some really cool fermenting stuff too, among other things. So I'm excited to bring you all along on my fermenting journey. There's going to be more to come, but this is going to be part of the next sauerkraut. I am going to go ahead and chop this fennel bulb up, and you'll see what happens next. So I'm chopping up the fennel. I removed the center core that can be a little bit tougher, and I also would let you know, save these stalky parts for throwing into your red sauce, tomato sauce. The fennel adds a really rich flavor if you're making your own homemade pasta sauces. So I've cut the bottom stalky stem off. I also pulled the outer leaves off, which you'll remember those are what goes on top of the sauerkraut when it gets packed into the jar. And this is an organic green cabbage, although the recipe in her video that I will link below this video, she's using a red cabbage. I just made a red cabbage, so I'm going to use the green cabbage, and instead of using a red beet that she uses in her recipe, I'm using a golden beet. So let's get started. So as I've showed you in the other videos, I went ahead and cut the inner core out of the two cabbage halves, and I'm using Fermenti's method of slicing the cabbage lengthwise, and then I will be chopping it this way to get a nice even chop. It's better, according to her video, she said hand chopping is better than using a machine, and I would have to agree. All right, let me chop this up and I'll show you what comes next. Here is the lovely chopped cabbage. I'm going to add it to the bowl where I have already put the chopped fennel. So hold on just a moment. Well, I have filled the bowl with the cabbage. I still have a little bit left, but I've run out of room in my bowl. I put the salt on, and I'm just going to let this sit for a few minutes per how she said to do it. She's calling this the dry salting method, to just mix the salt around really good with the cabbage, and in this case the fennel bulb that was also chopped up, and then just allow this to rest. So I'm gonna go do a few things, and I will come back and we'll do the next step. I've gone ahead and finally chopped up the fennel leaves, and I've gone ahead and grated a golden beet. As I mentioned, she had chosen to use a red beet, but since I just used red beets in the other sauerkraut with the red cabbage, and I'm using a green cabbage, I'm doing it my way. But I hope you'll try her recipe as well once you see her little video underneath mine. I've been working on the cabbage for a while, and hopefully you can see there's lots of liquid here now. I've blended together the beetroot and the fennel leaves. I've got two more things to do. One is to peel and chop up this pear, and the other is to grind some fresh fennel seeds. Both of these items are going to go into this kraut. And although her recipe does not call for it, I'm going to add a small bit of turmeric because I'm really enjoying the flavor that it is adding to my sauerkraut. So we got the turmeric and the ground up fennel seeds. I'm going to just mix this together and then mix it into the cabbage. I'm not mixing this very roughly or with any kind of force now. I'm just kind of tumbling it around to make sure that the beets and the turmeric, the fennel seeds, all of that, and the pear is blended into the cabbage. So it's a real, there's not going to be any pockets that are just cabbage by themselves. Okay, next step for me is to put this into the jar, and I'll show you that in just a moment. We'll take a look at this one in about 6 days. Thanks for joining me here. See you then. Bye for now. Hey y'all, so 8 days ago I went ahead and put this sauerkraut together. I'm going to test it now with a pH meter, and I will explain why I'm doing that once I bring you over to the other part of the counter.
Similar instructions to that of the taste test. You can even do both at the same time. Dip the pH meter in. Here you can see the airflow kraut one drop to a 4.2 pH. And the airlock lid one dropped to a 3.8. Both are very good readings below 4.5. We've got a healthy and safe ferment going on here.
So I'm just gonna lift this out. You can see it actually overflowed into the interior of this cup. I'm gonna go ahead and pour that out. The inside of the cup's a little foamy, but I am not seeing anything in the bowl. All right, so let's go ahead, and this is a pH meter. Okay. To my nose, it smells like this sauerkraut is ready. And based on what she was saying, I would say that I and the little microbial life forms have done it. It's not stabilized, but it's seems to be in the lower numbers. Try set it here, see what it does. Okay, great. All right, we have a good ferment. So like I do, I've poured off the water, and now I'm pulling off the cabbage leaves that I used to pack this down and keep the kraut below the surface, the air surface. And I'm just going to dig down in here a little bit. Now, I did not follow her recipe exactly because I added turmeric to this, but it does have the pear and the fennel in it. I can smell the pears to a certain extent. Yeah. All right, let's get a little bit here and have a taste. Oh, wow. I know I say that every single time, but once again, this is a good recipe. This is really tasty. All right. I am still liking the red sauerkrauts more than the green sauerkrauts, but this one is really good, and I would definitely make this one again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put one of my plastic lids on here and get this thing in the refrigerator. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to add a little bit more information to the bottom of this based on what I just learned at the Fermenting Festival. These are some of the things that I learned during the Fermenting Festival at the demonstration that Fermenti put on. So, actually his wife, because he was running the booth. So, number one, if you have the temperature in the house, it needs to be warm in order for the fermentation to take place. Primary fermentation takes place in 3 to 5 days, secondary fermentation within 7 to 10 days. And the best way to know if it's done is to taste it. Now, once you want to stop the fermentation, 33 to 38 degrees will stop the ferment. So once it's going into your refrigerator, if your refrigerator is a little bit above 38 degrees, it will continue to ferment, although at a much slower rate. But if it's below 38 degrees, that's going to stop the fermentation. Now we're looking at the jars that I have left of my fermentation that I just made, as well as my last 2 fermentations. One of the things that she recommended was downsizing your ferments as you consume them, so less of them is exposed to air in the jar. So I'm going to take the purple kraut that I made and place it into the smaller jar, and the last green cabbage kraut I made into this other jar, just so that there's less air exposure on the sauerkraut. Now, if you're using fruit, which I have demonstrated in some of my other videos, her recommendation was 10 to 15% of fruit in any fermentation. And again, the oxygen can darken the top layer. So even with the fruit fermentations, go ahead and decrease the size of the jar as you're eating the ferments. Brine protects from mold. So if you're mixing a brine to do the fermentation, you would be adding 2.5 teaspoons of salt to distilled water, 1 quart of distilled water. Now, you would use chunks of vegetables for brining, and you would use shredded vegetables with the dry salt method, which is what we do when we are doing the sauerkrauts. Now, the little video that I'm clipping to the bottom of this one, which is this other fermenting channel that I found where I got the recipe for this particular sauerkraut, she talks about using glass weights and also using rocks. Now, Meg was really specific. She had some not so good outcomes using glass weights, as in they were shattering, and she never recommends using rocks unless you put them in a plastic baggie, and the same goes for the glass weights. If the weight were to break, they're contained in a plastic bag and you've not lost your entire ferment. And the rocks, she said, no matter how clean you get them, she just felt like that was not sanitary, even though she said probably our grandparents were doing this back in the day when they were making ferments. So rocks and glass weights, if you're using them, go in a plastic baggie. That said, you don't even have to do that, because you can take a plastic bag and fill it with brine and use that as your weight. The whole thing is to just keep the sauerkraut in an anaerobic environment by submerging it beneath the liquid. Keep the air away from it, and the fermentation happens. Now, she also said that the people who do sterilizing of things, like when we're canning, that opens up a pristine environment for other organisms that can get in there and create a not good event. Think about salmonella. This will never happen in a sauerkraut ferment. She said there is a battle going on inside of every jar, and the lactic acid bacteria will always be the winners. She also talked about testing things with a pH meter, and 3.8 to 4.4 pH being safe. So I went ahead and demonstrated that, and also clipped the little part of the video that I have posted below this one to the other woman's channel, so you can watch that if you're interested. But just having been there at this class and met her and met her husband, which was really cool to just meet both of them. What stellar human beings. So grateful that they're not too far away from where I live, and they're doing really amazing things on YouTube and on Rumble. So I'm also going to list a couple of Fermenti's most recent posts on Rumble. You can join him every Sunday, Eastern Standard Time, 4 o'clock, on his YouTube channel. And on that channel and that information, he is posting scientific papers, medical papers. It's stuff that he is pulling off where they are posting these things about what's going on behind the scenes. Well worth listening to, and join live. If you have questions, he will answer them. So all of that said, I'm going to go ahead and transfer these sauerkrauts into smaller containers, and the next thing I'm going to try making is going to be a kimchi. I've got these peppers, and I'm going to go get some cabbage this morning because I've used up everything I had. Thank you again so much for joining me. I know this was a longer video. Please, in the comments, let me know if you're doing this. My friend Marika, who came to the Fermenting Festival with me last night, I was visiting with her, and she's got her first sauerkraut on the counter, and I'm so happy that she's going to start doing this. And our other friend Donna said she was ready to do it too. So I hope you all are enjoying these. Please, in the comments, let me know if there's other ones that you want to see. And also, if you're trying this, what recipes you're using, because we can be sharing this here. All right, see you in the next video. Till then. And I just wanted to quickly mention that if you didn't want to put brine in a plastic baggie, as I have been demonstrating all the ferments I've been doing, I've been using smaller jars that fit into bigger jars that keep the sauerkraut pressed below the liquid and therefore keep it in an anaerobic environment. Okay, go make sauerkraut. See you later.